It's a miracle becoming yourself. You don't need a different story. Heaven only holds us broken as hell. Living in a tale of glory. It's a miracle becoming yourself.
Well, all right, Chad. How's it going? How are you?
It's going good, man. Ready to release an album in a day and a half and go on tour next week.
Yeah, super busy. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm pumped. I've been able to listen to the album. My wife, I think, is mildly excited for this interview to be over because since I've gotten the link, I've listened to it nonstop. And so she's excited to hear some other music for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I've been digging it and it's been great. But for those who don't know who you are, can you just give like a little introduction to yourself, to Kings Kaleidoscope, and what you guys have been doing for the last little bit?
Yeah. So I'm from Seattle, Washington, grew up outside of there, and yeah, kind of played music my whole life, but ended up working at a church in my early 20s, I should say. And then in my mid 20s, after leading worship for a while, decided to start making records. And so Kings Kaleidoscope is a band that's very steeped in a lot of just me working at churches, like worship leading history, but I'm definitely just writing a lot of songs mostly about faith now, and not necessarily in like a Sunday morning kind of a circuit way.
Yeah.
And we're an eclectic group. I grew up DJing and sampling to make music, and then when I decided to make Kings Kaleidoscope, it was like that process of sampling recorded music transferred to sampling live friends who are killer musicians, but it's still very collagey and very eclectic and really groove based, faith based. It's kind of a unicorn. It's kind of its own thing.
Yeah, it's a hard band when people are like, because when I introduce people to you, I'm like, okay, you just got to brace yourself because this is going to be weird. Like you're not going to expect what you're going to hear, because it's like, what is this band? You're like, it's kind of a worship band, but it's not a worship band. And I don't know how to describe the genre because it's all over the place, but it's really great. And you just need to bear with it for a little bit and you'll love it. And that's interesting too, because you guys did start out as like this little kind of indie almost worship band, but you're not that anymore. And you evolved to doing a bunch of different things where you've done multiple records, and your fan base is extremely dedicated to the work you guys do. And you guys have done like full productions where for videos, like you've live streamed multiple concerts that's kind of started during the COVID era. And those are incredibly well done. And you were doing recorded stuff before that. And then now your tours seem to be getting bigger and better. Because I went to a show you guys did in Saskatchewan that was years ago. It was at a Bible college for like a youth conference.
Oh, is it about Lake? No.
It was like Moose Jaw, but it was at Briarcrest, and it was Cairnport, Saskatchewan. It was the middle of nowhere, and it was like middle winter that you guys showed up for this.
Oh yeah. Hey, I have a funny story about that one. Wait.
Yeah.
No, never mind. Was that in Regina?
It was really close to Regina. So
okay, so we walked. Can I tell? This is a funny story.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of people with different like backgrounds in our band, right? Like, but we had just replaced our drummer of a long time with a new drummer, and the old drummer was white, the new drummer was black, and it was his very first like test show.
Yeah.
And we walked in that arena. Do you know what I want to say?
Yeah.
We walked in that arena and they had 3 projectors and they put our K logo on it. So we walked in the arena. It's like KKK, and he just started making like the craziest jokes. And we were like, "Oh yeah, dude, this is like, this is kind of our vibe." You didn't know, like it was so random. So that's why we always remember that show. Otherwise, I don't remember anything about it.
That's awesome. I remember too, because I'm a drummer, so I followed his social media for a bit, and he used to make jokes about that all the time, where he'd go around your guys' merch and be like K, and he'd be like, he's great. He's a phenomenal drummer. And that show, because you guys would have flown out, I don't know what it was like, but it felt smaller than even what you're doing now as far as production. And so you guys
no production for that show.
Yeah. So you guys have like gone from this small indie band to now you're doing all this stuff. And you made this post on social media recently that if you don't want to talk about, we don't have to talk about it. But I was like, this is super interesting that you just kind of texted your manager and you were like, 3 years, 2 albums, 1 EP, 2 tours around the world, 3 global live streams, 2 mental breakdowns, 4 urgent care visits, 16 months of being in debt, 1 close friend gone, 2 staff reorganizations. It takes a lot. Art's expensive. So for you being on this journey, and as a fan of your music, one of my biggest fears is that you guys will be like, well, we have all this like insanely creative music that we're still like this incredibly underrated band that we know for a fact are making music that is far more unique and takes a lot more effort than a lot of things that go mainstream as far as Christian music is concerned. And so one of my biggest fears is that I'm like, yeah, music takes a lot and you guys put a lot into it. And I'm like, man, I wouldn't fault you guys for being like, yeah, let's pull the plug. Like it'd be easier to just work a 9 to 5 and it'd be less stressful. But you guys don't do that. And so for you, you're looking at this upcoming album, you're about to do another tour. You've gone from this little thing that's now become a much larger thing, but still takes a lot of energy because you guys are really like do it yourself. You run the whole thing. What is that like for you as like an artist and as someone doing this? And it's specifically during this season of Baptized Imagination, now Kings Kaleidoscope. Why do you keep doing it? And what has it been like for you?
That's a great question. What time is it right now? It's 11.
Yeah.
So probably 11:45 last night as I was laying in bed. I was literally, and my 2-year-old who turns 3 tomorrow was sleeping next to me. I was trying not to wake her up, but I had a little book light and I literally was writing the exact same questions in my journal. I was writing like, all right, Lord, why this album? Why this time? Why am I doing this? And I think that, like all of us in life have all this, like work is toil, and it's really hard. And in a way, yes, Kings has chosen a very hard path. Like we are a Christian band that is not going to make music that the Christian sort of network and industry will promote. We played our first Christian festival ever since releasing our first album.
Yeah, because the second one got you in trouble.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, Creation Fest bailed on us. We played at Creation Fest once before we released our album when I worked at a church. But yeah, Soul Fest, great for them. Like they had us out and it was really fun. But like all that to say, and it's not like it's like they're doing the wrong thing. It's just like we know that's not our audience.
Yeah.
So that's just one example of a way of taking a hard route. Creatively, we take a hard route, which is I have a personal bent and like personality and just value towards it's just like a punk mindset. Like I just don't want to do what anybody else has done. I want to be like anti everything all the time, which most people would kind of throw the idea back at like, well, like if you're just against everything, what are you for? But I don't really know if that's, I'm kind of gotten over that because I'm like, I don't know. I just think that God makes certain people to just kind of disrupt stuff. So that's maybe the way I am. And I've just kind of accepted it at this point. But all that to say, like, yes, it takes us hundreds of hours to make a song and figure out a way to combine things that shouldn't be combined to make something that's very fresh and very original. And then it takes a whole other set of effort to explain that to an audience or a general public that's never heard anything like that before. And then it's like, how many of those people are interested in it? And it's a really like dumb business in a sense, to be involved in. Like it's really dumb. It's like, let's make something people have never heard of before and that you can't really explain and then feed it to them. But I do think that, obviously there's a deeper thing here that I believe that God has kind of ordained it. That's actually what I ended up writing last night. That's what I'm just coming to my mind. I wrote, "This is ordained." Um, I think that it's a very honest way that I've been able to tell, God's story and my faith story
Mm,
genuinely. And I just, for as dumb of a business and exhausting of a business as it is to be in, and as much as it costs, as you read, it's sort of what God has put in front of me and us. And so we do it. And I
mm,
don't have the answers as to why. Um, but yeah, it's extremely challenging. I've had anxiety disorders of various kinds my whole life since I was a toddler.
mm,
And so once again, it's sort of like, why am I in this sort of meat grinder of a lifestyle when I can, like, usually I hate getting on planes or traveling, or like, my nervous system is always finicky and always acting up. So like, how, realistic is that for me to be getting on stage
mm,
and all that stuff? But in all of that weakness, there is a beautiful, mysterious power that God seems to work through, that is totally in spite of me and sort of in spite of the band's situation. Um, and so, yeah, I will keep doing it until it's clear that, God's opening a different path or
mm.
door somewhere else.
Well, I appreciate it, and I know a lot of people do. I think that's why people connect with your stuff, is because it is like unique and different, and it's not something anyone else is doing. And that like honesty for yourself as an artist of like displaying your own journey, which has been kind of all over the place. I think a lot of people connect with, and I think that's why a lot of people who like your music are not the people you'll find at like a Christian festival,
Right.
is
Right.
because they don't connect with kind of this isn't a fair interpretation, but almost like the cookie cutter box of like, here's the Christian song that has the nice ending. And you're like, isn't
Mhm.
that great? And you're just like, yeah, it's not me. Like things are just more complicated. And that's why your guys' art um, connects with people. And even when you look at Baptized Imagination and now King's Kaleidoscope, this record, you guys went on tour last year, and this was
Yep.
originally like one. I don't know how much of it was added or wasn't added as far as songs go. If everything was originally there and they've all been tweaked now, or if there's a lot of new stuff. But originally, these albums were both just one ginormous version of
Yeah.
Baptized Imagination. That then somewhere along the way, you guys went, no, we're gonna split this into two albums.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you've got this one coming out. And so for you, what kind of led you guys to do that, where you went on this tour, you did these songs, and then somewhere between the release of Baptized Imagination and now you went, we're going to cut this thing in half, and the tones of which, if you listen to them, are very different, where
Yep.
Baptized Imagination is like, it's funny that the title sounds so optimistic in my head, but then you listen to it, you're like,
Yeah.
this is a sad, this is a
Yeah.
sad record. And then
Yeah.
this one is much more like just upbeat, and it's almost like kind of jarring in a sense from a fan base, where I'm like, wow, like most of this is really like positive, which usually it's kind of like all over the place in your guys' albums.
Yep.
And so for
Yep.
you, why did you guys decide to split this into two? And why do you think there's kind of that dichotomy between the two, or Baptized Imagination? They definitely feel like they belong together in a sense, but they're not together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're completely different thematically, and I don't. So here's how I would say it. When the kind of pandemic started, we started what we called Camp Kaleidoscope, which was a
Mm-hmm.
place up here, actually right on the border of Canada,
Oh, really?
Lyndon, Washington. Um, and very generously, we got to start using the space, and we called it Camp Kaleidoscope, and we'd fly everybody in and kind of like basically quarantine together. And we've been up there a handful of times, and we made a ton of stuff, which, I mean, on these two records is probably like, it's probably like 60% of what we made. There's like a lot more there, but we made all this stuff over the course of basically these like 2 or 3 years, right? 2 years. And we thought, like, all right, we have so much here, we can piece together this like huge album. But leading into last year's Baptized Imagination tour, and I had a title and everything, it just, I it felt clear that like we're not landing on the theme yet. Like this stuff's really sort of like our albums generally tell a story, and I'm pretty
Mm.
set on that. It's not just like we need some songs around a
Yeah.
single because we don't really have singles. Like our singles always perform terribly because you can't playlist our band. It's a whole that's
Yeah.
a whole business thing. Is like the world runs on Spotify playlists now, and like good luck finding a King's Kaleidoscope song that like just sits nicely in
Oh,
between somebody else's stuff. You
that
know what I mean?
yeah. Well, that's what I told people with the last album is I sent it to people and I was like, listen, this is an album that's an album. Like you got to listen to it front to back. If you just dive in and you skim like 30 seconds into it, you're not going to get it. And it was
No,
like, it's one of those things you got to tell people, you're like, you got to listen to the whole thing or else it's not going to make sense. You're going to be like, what is
right.
this?
Yeah, I'll circle back to that. Put a pin in that. I'll circle back to that. But we basically wrote all these songs together at Camp Kaleidoscope, and then it just was like we were gonna put out this whole album before our tour last year, but I didn't feel good about it. And if I basically don't feel like 120% on something, it just doesn't happen, and it drives our team pretty nuts a lot of times. But I was like, screw this. We're gonna tour. We've had this pandemic. We're finally back to tour. We're gonna tour, and we're just gonna play this whole thing live so that we can feel it out.
Mm.
Because I don't want to canonize this thing if it's not like, zipped up tight and bulletproof, basically.
Yeah.
And we came back from the tour, and it was like crystal clear to me within a couple weeks. It was like, all right, I personally am still in the throes of this idea of baptized imagination, rewiring all these panic attack trauma things I have, learning about my nervous system physically and mentally. I've been doing all this therapy. Like that's still where I am.
Mm.
The band has been having these little beautiful pockets of joy at Camp Kaleidoscope over the last 2 years and on tour. And we basically have simultaneously been making songs about both.
Yeah.
So Baptized Imagination is Chad's album. It is about me facing myself in isolation, starting in the pandemic, and then still having to live with my, weaknesses once the world reopens again. And my lament, or not lament, it's just my wrestle and crying out to God in a whole album. It's like our song of prayer in a whole album. And it's tight. It makes sense. Like the whole narrative of it is there. It is very empty feeling. It's very longing, but then there's a enormous ending in the album of surrender. Like the whole point of that album is to just exhale all of it and release all of that gripping and let go and just basically tell God, I kind of give in, if I'm on this ship and it's going to get tossed around and thrown around, I'm at least going to be calm while I'm in the middle of this storm. And so that was a clear album. We put that out in October. And then another series of like mental breakdowns and big things that were, seriously hard. I came starting in probably like February. I started to kind of like come out of that in a very new way. And then it felt like, all right, I have enough clarity and energy now to relook at what else is left in this bucket of things. We've promised this album, King's Kaleidoscope, but what is that bucket now? And that bucket was, like I said, it's just, we spend 2 years making this stuff. There's like, everybody was dealing with their demons at home in isolation. There's a Chad record for that called Baptized Imagination. But then whenever the band would fly in and get together, there was these pockets of community and joy and just honestly like interpersonal like relationship and like dynamics and like challenges there and all that stuff. So we are going to make the album King's Kaleidoscope. The reason why subconsciously I kept wanting to self-title it that was because it is a self-reflective album about our dynamic, or every one of those songs is almost all of the songs on the album. There's a few that aren't really in this category, but almost all of them on this new album are interpersonal. They're actually, there's very few that are like me and God, or like, me talking to God. It's all, they're like songs of encouragement and community. And that to me actually feels like the most different thing lyrically than we've ever done. Because it's not a lot of me sort of wrestling with God, or there's not a lot of like prayer songs. It's just mostly, yeah, people singing, like me singing to people in the band, or about the band, or about some dynamic that they have with their own thing with faith or something like that. So it's a Pockets of Joy album, and it's self-referential, and yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad done, because same thing. I changed the title of that thing like 4 times. I didn't know it was going to go on that thing. It was going to be a lot more songs. It was going to have like, so many interludes of like just jams from Camp Kaleidoscope. But then at the end of the day, I was like, I just think it's just these like 8 songs that are like super tight, and they go together like this. And every album's a wild journey. But yeah, after 3 years, we have 2 of those, and we're right back on the road again too, which is wild.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I can feel it as a fan, where it felt like a very different album, that there were no interludes and there were no like
Mhm.
1 minute kind of weird experimental song. It was very much like, here's a bunch of tracks that are full tracks and we're putting them out. And lyrically, it is really different, where it's
Yeah.
much more joyful and optimistic. Well, it kind of feels like that, like you talk about, for me, not knowing all that from the outside, it
Mhm.
felt like it really did feel like a sequel to Baptized Imagination, where you have this kind of journey of just like wallowing in this sucks.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the end, it starts to pick up and it ends on that crescendo
Yeah.
of joy and hope. And then it kind of
Yep.
just leads right into this one. And even for those listening, like this first song on this album, All
Mhm.
Right Kid, it uses a lyric from the last album, because you do talk about You and I Again, referencing that, and then Breathe
Yeah.
Forever
Yeah.
and Don't Wait Now Kids, All Right. And so for you, coming out of that, do you see it as a sequel, or do you see them as very different? And if so, maybe it is a little bit of a sequel. For that first track where you come into it and it's very optimistic and upbeat and referencing You and I Again, what kind of made you want to put that at the beginning? Because I know for you guys, it's not just like, where do songs just fit
Mhm.
to make an album just because. It's everything is usually put in a place for a reason. So why start off the album with All Right Kid?
Um, okay. I don't emotionally see it as a sequel, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, because a lot of the songs were being written at the same time as
Yeah.
Baptized Imagination. It was literally just like Baptized Imagination is the songs that I was writing primarily, not all of them, but like generally by myself in
Mm.
the last few years. And King's Kaleidoscope is the songs that we were jamming on while we were at Camp Kaleidoscope, and there was like a reprieve from isolation. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah.
So they're definitely like maybe brother or sister albums, but to me it's primarily by like time.
Yeah.
And uh the reason is because thematically, when I think about Baptized Imagination, um ultimately the thing that would pull me out of that pulls me out of that, man, I might contradict myself a little bit, but I feel like the sequel to that album would actually be more of a worship album,
Mm.
that's like really directed, like with a lot of songs to God that are like more praise or like thankful oriented, or like just proclaiming. Like I feel like to get out of that hole, like looking to God is actually the answer, not looking
Mm.
at community. And
Mm.
this album has a few moments of that. I will say there's a caveat, like Radiant Reason has that. Radiant
Yeah.
Reason has this like praise chorus that I feel very much is like a lift out of Baptized. But um this I don't know if that makes sense. Like if I was gonna say what is the way to get out of Baptized Imagination, like I would have wanted it to be more of a praise angle. This is more just like, hey, in the middle of everybody dealing with their stuff that's so hard, you you can find um a lightness and a levity from the weight in community with God's
Mm.
people. And it's beautiful. And it doesn't mean it's going to solve your answers, but it is there's a break there that is God given and beautiful. And so I sort of see it as that.
Mm.
Uh, but I have no problem with people just being like, I don't know, it just feels like you came out of the storm and it's happy, because that is true. Like that's true too. I don't necessarily think of it that way. I just think of them as like pretty separate things. But the other reason I'll just say this here, but like because I'll probably start talking about it on this tour. The other reason I probably think about that is because the next album we do, if I can pull it off, who knows what life has in store, but I'm almost positive that I want to attempt just a straight up worship album that can be used, like where the arrangements are still nuts, but the songs can be used on Sundays.
Yeah.
So to me, I have that in the future that nobody else knows about. And to me, I'm
That's the
like,
real sequel.
yeah, I'm like, that's the actual like sequel that I want to build. You know what I mean?
You and I again. Breathe forever in. Leave wherever ends. Breathe forever in. Don't wait now, kid. It's alright. Don't worry about it then. It's alright. Don't wait now, kid. It's alright. Don't worry about it then. It's alright. It's alright. It's alright. It's alright. Don't you worry about it then. It's alright. It's alright. It's alright. It's alright. Don't worry about it then. It's alright.
Well, that makes sense. And that's the funny thing about talking about music is it's all interpretive to the listener.
Totally.
And I always find that when I talk to artists and I'm like, so you're going to probably tell me I'm wrong, but this is how I feel about this.
No, I mean,
But-
it's not even wrong. I think most people will think that. They'll be like,
Yeah.
baptized as a downer, and this is like the coming out of the hole. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, but when you get this worship album that I'm gonna make, that is gonna be the actual like way you come out of that hole. This is the sort of like, man, life's hard. Like, should we just go get some ice cream and go to the skate park?
Yeah.
Like that's what this album is, and hang
Yeah.
out.
Well, I would love for you guys to make a worship album like that. So I want to encourage you to do that and don't change your mind.
Yeah,
Because
no,
that would-
I've been wanting to for a long time.
I
Like,
think that would be awesome.
yeah, like a full length ASAP Stereos or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with that, I just want to touch, and you can say I don't want to talk about this, and I can cut this out. Because for you, like, it's no secret about kind of your background. And this podcast is called the Reconstructionist Podcast because it's supposed to be helping people, especially during COVID. A lot of my friends went through massive deconstruction for a lot of different reasons, and it's supposed to help people kind of come out of that state, or help them on their journey. And so for you, I find it interesting because I know your context and where you were at and some of the things that was probably experienced, that for you, you still see community as something that's important that can bring people out of a baptized imagination kind of experience. Why do you still have that optimistic view of community? Because for a lot of people, what I found with some of the stuff that you would have seen other people go through or you yourself have been through, because I don't know what you have seen or haven't seen or been through, that it's easy to get cynical about community and be like, I'm done. Like, I don't want community. I don't want to be a part of that again. So why for you and for the band, is that still a place where people find glimpses of joy, where they're in those dark periods, but they can come together and experience levity? Because I find for a lot of people, that's a struggle or something they don't even want. But for you, that's doesn't seem to be the case by the way you're talking about this album, that you see community as a great thing that's helpful.
Yes. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that isolation is bad for all of us. I don't think that we're designed to be that way. And we can talk all day about like introverts and extroverts and stuff like that, but like, and that all that stuff's real. But if you're only reflecting yourself and your perspective back to yourself all day long without getting feedback from other people, how could you not get stuck? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how could you not? And if you only choose to absorb sort of information and data and perspectives or news or whatever through your own filter and never through anybody else's filter, same thing. You're like you're just a little feedback loop of yourself, and that's basically impossible to grow. And I think it's also impossible to face the things in life that are hard, um, because we all have limited tools to deal with hardships, right? And the more the more people that you have around you, the more those reflections and perspectives start to change, the more that your heart gets opened up. And like, okay, so here's a thing that's pretty nuts that I learned. So right, like a lot of my journey is like, all right, panic disorder, this guy's got panic attacks, he's, I have a uh I have a weakness in my the way that somewhere in between the way that my brain operates my nervous system, right? Sends me into fight or flight way too often. And um, you know, the good side of that is like I can sometimes channel that into pretty hyper productive, like OCD. Like if you think about editing a King song,
Yeah.
it's like I can take all of that energy that's looking for something to be wrong, and I can go, all right, I have 160 tracks in this session from Camp Kaleidoscope. I'm going to make it a 3-minute song.
Mm.
Great redeeming way to use my chemistry, right? But it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes there's not a project to do that with. So how do I balance that? I learned recently, and I believe it, this is nuts, that humans' nervous systems synchronize in proximity to other humans' nervous systems.
Mm.
So if you're really freaked out, but you walk into a room of a bunch of people that are really calm, if you sit there and give it time, your nervous system, just by being in proximity with them, like their energy, and you're watching them, your mind is processing with your eyes, and they're like, oh, they're calm. Eventually your nervous system will go, okay, nothing is wrong, and it will change. And that is just like its own. I'm just giving that as a little example of that's why community is helpful. It even on a subconscious level, you don't even know that you're doing that. It's the same way you walk into a room and somebody is freaking out or really stressed. Like you're gonna start feeling the stress.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when people are stuck, like when you're stuck and you're depressed, or when you're in a serious thing in life that's happening, being around other people, especially I will just think people that have faith that's the same as you, that can pray for you, that can help you retune your perspective and like help you fix kind of your eyes back on, the hope of Christ. Like I just I don't understand how that could not be valuable. Now, if you don't, if your whole community has always been maybe somewhat of like a tough situation with a family, or like unhealthy church situation, it's not that you don't need community, it's just you need the right kind.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No, that totally makes sense. And I agree. I would probably be a much worse person if I didn't have community, where I had people like looking out for me and like helping me. And when I got into tracks that were not good, being like, hey, I don't know if that's the direction we want to head in. I'm just like gently coming around me and helping me out, and vice versa. And so, that's reflected in this album a lot. To dive back into your songs, I want to dive into Radiant Reason, because when I was listening through the tracks, this one started and I was like, this is weird. Like, this is not like, usually for your music, I have a feel. I've known the band long enough that I know where we're going. I kind of know the sounds that come out of you guys. And then this one started and I was like, this is so weird. It's the way it's designed is so funky and groovy and different. That's hard to say for your band. It's like you guys did something you've never done before. But I felt like that on this track. And there's a lyric at the beginning where you're like, I don't dance with the devil in D or hold hands with the power that be. I'm in step with the spirit in me. And later you talk you just kind of like actually just start talking on the track about how you often find that you're dancing with the wrong voices. And you kind of don't want to do that. And so for you, what inspired that track for you? And yeah, how did you guys come up with such a weird, funky track that took like a fan by surprise, which is saying something for your music? Because usually I'm used to being surprised,
Yeah.
and that one was more like, whoa, this is really different.
So the like the kind of the groundwork of the music bed for that song was from Camp Kaleidoscope. And what we do is at camp is there's like a glass window between the live room and the whatever the room with the mixer is. I forget what it's called, mixing room. And we have two stations with two sets of monitors like pointed through the glass at each other. So what we would do for fun is like like literally one time I was like, all right, Andrew, you're a captain, and Bezzy, you're a captain. And then I made the whole band line up and they like chose teams. And then we split up and we say, all right, you have 1 hour to make a song, you
Yeah.
know? And so we do fun stuff like that. And like we're looking at each other through the glass, like, I wonder what they're making. Like, I wonder what they're making. But or so I'll do stuff like that just to get like, you know, just for fun. Or sometimes I'll like this song. I just looked at Daniel and John and JJ who were in that room while I was in the other room. I said, okay, you guys have to make something that's 90s breakbeat.
Yeah.
And so when I came back in, they had that bass riff and some of those chords, right? So that's how the music bed gets that. And then, you know, a month later, whatever, I come home and it's like, all right, this thing's really cool. What, you know, what is it? Basically. And the very first time I ever try to sing on stuff, it was really, you know, it's like vampy off the top of the head. Usually those phrases end up determining what the song is. And then it's like reverse engineering. It's almost like I'm writing like a play or something. All right, I have this phrase, I have this music bed. So how do I make a song out of it? And so the very first thing I ever sang on that song was in the breakdown, I sang I Don't Dance, and that like super funky part. And so then I was like, great. And we called it I Don't Dance for like a year. And it was like, well, that song's really cool, but like what, I mean, how are you gonna write a song about don't dance? You know what I mean? It's just really stuck. And I mean, oh my gosh, I've probably written 4 different complete like verses for it and like all this stuff. And I mean, I wrote it with Zach Bolin of Citizens. I wrote on it with Andy Mineo a bunch, like multiple times. And this is how it ended up. And now I'm going to tell you how the song clicked. So the songs get stuck like that, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to hop over a little bit to, you know, the season of Baptized Imagination for me was a very frustrated, all right, I keep having all this anxiety disorder. What the hell? Like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm an adult now. I got kids. Like, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
So I jump into therapy. I, you know, really start pulling open all this stuff and figuring it all out. And during that time period, when I get COVID, I start having heart palpitations, which is, I guess, pretty normal for a lot of people after they have viruses that are big viruses. They're not serious. No doctors are worried about it. But me, who's always worried that there's something wrong with my body since I was a kid because of, you know, basically trauma at my birth, which I didn't know about till last year, that just freaks the shit out of me. Like I'm basically stuck for the whole year worrying about that. I get through it. I'm back on some medication. Then it happens the third to last show of tour last year on stage, and I have to leave the stage. So I'm really screwed now because like I thought I'm out of the woods. I'm not out of the woods. Like my nervous system is throwing me into this thing that's happening, and it's very scary. No doctor's worried about me. They just tell me to keep going, but I can't get my mind to keep going. Back into the thing all last summer, I'm like trying to figure it out. And basically I landed at this place in about February, so not too long ago, where it was actually about January, where I had tried another medication and responded terribly to it, like for the anxiety. I was still having the heart palpitations every once in a while, but not too often. And it was all just anxiety induced, right? And I kind of got to this point where for me, doing the therapy, trying to find the supplements, even the like, this is how I need to work out or eat or all those things. They were all functionally me still trying to control myself in a way that was telling myself something was wrong with me. If that makes sense. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like something is wrong with me, so I need to eat this way. Something is wrong with me, so I need to take this supplement.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with me, so I need to try this medication. Something is wrong with me, so I need to always monitor my heart on my Apple Watch. And slowly but surely, this year so far, God has been just having me, in a sense, put away the tools. Like, take the Apple Watch, stop thinking about your heart rate, turn it off, let it die, put it in the closet. And for me, that was like a major crutch. I realized, like, I hadn't left the house with that thing forever. I hadn't realized, I mean, leaving my watch at home and driving 20 minutes to hot yoga and back again was an exposure therapy, like full on.
Yeah.
You know, choosing to be like, all right, I think this medication isn't really working, so I'm gonna not take it, and I'm just gonna ride out anxiety waves. That was an exposure therapy. And I got to the point where in ramping these things up, where I realized this is actually the work that I'm not talking for anyone else. This is actually the work that my brain needs. Like, my neuroplasticity needs to go in this direction of, I lost you for a sec. You back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Sorry. That's where I need to go with this. And so what I started doing was getting up every morning, and I could barely do it at first, but like, I would just run 1 mile until I started freaking out because my heart rate would start going. Anytime my heart rate would just start going this last year, it would make me have a panic attack. So I would run intentionally every morning to have a panic attack, not monitor it with a watch or nothing, and then just start walking and breathing and just praying the whole time and just letting God work on my nervous system and rewire my thinking. And this is a long roundabout, but this is why this matters. And so at some point in that process, on those runs, I'm listening to our demos, and Radiant Reason comes on, and it's like, oh, this is the energy of this song. This energy is, I don't dance with all these voices of fear. I don't dance with the devil. I'm not going to deal with this. I can run hard right now, and I'm not going to worry about what's going on with my heart. So isn't that, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like complex. It's like, this is why King's Kaleidoscope, it's just hard for us to be like, let's just put out an EP every year and try to like get some reels going on Instagram so that we can get a lot of like on Spotify for like a month. It just doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, it's too deep. Like, you got the poppiest song on the album is me trying to worry about not having a heart attack and run. You know what I mean? But like, nobody's going to know that.
No.
But I say the songs they cost a lot, you know? So that's the whole thing. I don't dance with the devil indeed, or hold hands with the powers that be. I'm in step with the spirit in me. And I had, one mind, one body, one spirit, one speed. I'm literally thinking about running.
Yeah.
In that song. That's
so awesome.
I know. Yeah. So it's like, it's so layered, and it's also mysterious, and it's very free association, but it's all very true and real. And you can feel when you listen to that song, it's, it's kind of just for fun. Like the guys at camp, like, make a 90s breakbeat. Yeah. Well, if it makes something like King's Kaleidoscope song, it's probably going to start meaning something. And it's there.
Don't dance. Don't dance. Sometimes I find myself moving with the wrong voices. When really, I only want to move with you. I'll be your light. I'll be alright. Being this brighter with you. You're my radiant reason for life.
Man, that's a crazy story. And I think it's a perfect example of like how you guys make music and why it's so different. And from just the like beginning of being in the studio and being like, you guys are going to split into teams and all this different stuff, and then coming up with this 90s breakbeat thing, and then sitting on it for a long time before
Yeah.
finally it all just clicks. And you're like, oh, I've got the song. I figured it out. Like, that's so unique.
Ability is to actually, like, the song has a reason to exist. It's like the song is to, like, it is literally encouraging me to have faith that my body is a temple that Christ lives in and it will not fail me. You know what I mean? Like it has a, now I can finish writing it, basically.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Wow. Just to keep going, to dive into another one, Infinity. I love this song a lot. It's so, I don't know, all the way you guys make sounds and how you just play with different noises that are weird, but then are just like so groovy and awesome. I love it. The lyrics, I wonder, but I want you more. Infinity's just a floor. No matter what I'm searching for, I love you more than my reasons why. I'm curious what that means to you, and for you guys too. What inspired this track?
Yeah, this would be the most sort of like, relational song with God on the album, probably, versus relational with other people. But that song, well, first off, just a cool musical thing.
Yeah.
Like, if I get a piece of gear, the first time I play with it, I'll create something that like becomes a song. And for guitar nerds, like I got this Maris Hedra pedal, which is like a weird pitch pedal, and all of the sounds in that song are basically from that one.
So cool.
Like, all the weird things that sound like synthesizers, it's just good to me playing guitar. But same thing, that song went through a ton of variations on lyrics. It was the last to make the album, actually. I didn't know if it was going to make it. But ultimately, like, there's an angle to this album, and I don't mean this in a all out way. Like, obviously God wants us to use our minds and be discerning and really think to the deepest of our abilities. But there's a, for me right now, if that's running story I just told you about, there has been an element to like, dude, like, cut it out. Just move. Like right now, just go move and stop thinking so hard. And so in the context of that, with this album, this song is the song that's a little bit like, I am not going to crack it. I am not going to figure you out, Lord. I am not going to figure out life. But in my heart, I love you more than any reason I could ever come up with to love you. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is like, there's something about you, God, that is greater and more, like it elicits this deep, passionate feeling of like devotion and just, I mean, I want to say love. I want more words than I can for love, but that is the lyrics. So I'll just say that. Then like me, like listing off of reasons or like spelling it out. It's just there. And I think that's what the song was. And maybe that is the play into the album with that song, is that it's trying to get to the feeling as the driving force and not sort of like the, what you can do with your mind all the time.
Stop, wait, speak straight, come again. Help me find the signs in all the lines you color in. It's a mystery, and I want to see deep into the valley of your shadow covering. Chasing your riptides, facing the fallout. Oh, I surrender now. I love you more than the reason. I wonder, but I want you more. Infinity is just a floor. No matter what I'm
It's funny the song. I found this with artists that a lot of artists I talk to. Some of my favorite tracks on their albums are ones that almost didn't make it. Where I'm like, man, can you imagine if
They are bigger because you think less about them. I don't know. Like that happens. It happens a lot. It's crazy.
because for me that's one of my favorite ones, and to be like, man, the thing didn't like it almost I almost wouldn't have had it, which is so weird.
Glad it landed there. It got great at the last minute. Like it was like to the last minute, it was like, I don't know, is this one not playful enough or whatever? But the record needs it. It's a moment of like it's got a little bit of a surrender to it as well, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, so cool. And you kind of alluded to this too, because another track I really love is Kaleidoscope. And actually, somebody recorded your show and posted it. So I've actually heard this track for a while, but it's changed. It's not the same. Which I don't know how you feel about that as an artist, but it was out there. The one that was not fully finished. And it's interesting listening, even that this album is called King's Kaleidoscope, because you can correct me if I'm wrong. But from my memory, I remember in an interview, or maybe it was on like an Instagram Q&A or something, that someone asked, hey, what does King's Kaleidoscope mean? And at the time you're like, it's just gibberish that sounds cool. It doesn't have a lot of meaning, which I could be wrong. My memory could be mistaken. But it seems like now with this album and with this song, that's potentially changed. So for you, when at the end of the song, when it's kind of going like, you're a kaleidoscope, we're a kaleidoscope, everybody's a kaleidoscope. What does that mean to you? And has your feeling on your band's name changed over the years? Does it mean something more significant now than it maybe originally did? Or is my memory of that story completely wrong and it always had a meaning?
I love the name King's Kaleidoscope a lot. I think but it was just given to us very randomly. Like a friend said it, and it was like, well, that feels good. You think about it too hard, it's just better than anything else we'd come up with. So we kept it. And it probably subconsciously felt good for a lot of very real reasons that people could like. It is colorful, it is very eclectic, it is extremely like reflective and radiant, and there's a ton of dimensions to our songs. Like all those, you know, I mean, you could like creative director BS your way through it, and it makes total sense.
Yeah,
like it really does, you know. Like, but all I'm saying is, I didn't go there when I agreed. Like when I was like, this is the band name. It just felt right, probably for those reasons. You know, that You're a Kaleidoscope section is so nuts. I remember writing that at Camp Kaleidoscope with Zach Boland and Brian Eichelberger, who are the guys I basically write so many lyrics with over the years. But we were up there like at midnight and all really tired and kind of loopy. And it was like, this song is the like, get on the bus, like the like, come be part of the squad song. Like that's what this is to be. And Bezzy had played that ba 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 ba, and then somebody came up with shot out there. It might have been me. I don't know who was like, oh, it should just say you're a kaleidoscope, because this is like this is this thing where you're trying to pull somebody sort of like out of their house, like onto this party bus and get on the road. And then it was like, well, what else are we going to say? And we sat there forever, like trying to bang our heads like, okay, if we say you're a kaleidoscope, what else are we going to say? And then and was like, no, it's just you're a kaleidoscope, we're the kaleidoscope, be the kaleidoscope. Which made us laugh. And I think that was probably the first sort of lyric that made us laugh, that there's not very often like a humor element in King's Kaleidoscope. I mean, sometimes there is, like we're playful, but that moment at camp, you know, during the pandemic or whatever, writing this song that had with that actually ended up bleeding into a lot of the other songs in the direction where I started taking that sort of moment and leaning into anything that the guys thought would maybe be like potentially corny or like cheesy. It was sort of like, that's exactly why we need to do it, because there's an element of like, we need to laugh a little bit, and there's a levity and a freedom in those moments that we need to really embrace right now. So I can list them off. Like Forever Again, there's a lyric, "You're living and it's awesome," which is insane. We almost called the album that, actually, which is would have been a crazy album title. And it's funny, everybody laughs at it, and then like you hear it 3 more times and you kind of go, wow, the word awesome is like basically awe. You could a bunch of ways about it. Or like All the Emotions is a 12-string guitar ballad. You know what I mean? Like people are afraid to play 12-string guitar, not me. King's Kaleidoscope, the song is like slap bass. John didn't want to play slap bass. It's like, you have to play slap bass. Like there's so many things, like, or kids singing on 1 2 3 Fantasy.
Yeah.
Like there's all of these things where like if there was like if you're like, if we were at a fork in the road to like choose something that could like seen as like corny, I like slammed on the gas and turned towards it as much as I could, because or like saxophone solos on All Right Kid. Like it was all very intentional.
We walk on the water and fall. A symphony swimming in awe. Safe in the eye of the storm, steady to soar. We walk on the water and fall. A symphony swimming in awe. Safe in the eye of the storm, steady to soar. You're a kaleidoscope, be the kaleidoscope. We're the kaleidoscope, you're a kaleidoscope. Be the kaleidoscope, we're the kaleidoscope. You're a kaleidoscope, be the kaleidoscope. We're the kaleidoscope, you're a kaleidoscope. Be the kaleidoscope, we're the kaleidoscope.
Well, and I think that's why part of this album is so cool, is because you did turn into those things in a way that was unique, where most people would be like, oh, we don't want to be, especially a band like yours. It's like, we're super artsy and really deep. And you're like, oh, corny, get that out of here. But you guys like leaned right into it. You didn't care.
Right. It's usually so dramatic and it can even feel like and I don't really like musical theater, but I've come to accept this. It's like it can even be a little bit theatrical, the way that our albums and things play out. It can be like listening to a play or something. And this is like the most lighthearted one we've had, I think.
Yeah. As we kind of land, I just want to land on All the Emotions. This track came out before, like as a single, way back, and it was really different. Where when the first time I listened to it, because I just got like a Dropbox link, I was like, is this like a bonus acoustic version or something I don't know about? But I think it's a beautiful example of the journey this album has been on, where from the single it was released, it's similar, but it's really different. And so I just want to ask you, like, what changed over this period of time where All the Emotions was like a really big, like it had lots of drums and it was big and it was kind of the thing you would imagine. And then it kind of got stripped back and it's really big, but there's not really a lot of drums. Those kind of got cut. And the 12-string guitar, which I heard in there, was awesome. And it's just really, it's a different vibe to kind of land the album on than I imagine what All the Emotions would have been like, the original version, if it was there. So why did that change for you? Whereas you released this album, you kind of changed that up over time and you wanted to land this album on that note.
Well, we kind of built out those songs. We built out the version with all the drums. That's a single first, and I didn't really like it. I actually felt like it was cool and like driving and pumping, but I didn't feel like it actually was very emotional, which is funny for a song called All the Emotions.
Yeah.
And so, we started to like strip it down and we re-recorded a bunch of strings with it. And then we made it feel more swingy. And I mean, speaking of the corn thing, it's like, I remember it was probably like 9:15 at night and Guitar Center closed at like 9:30 or 10. And it was like, I had this, oh my gosh, I know what it needs. This is like a 6/8 swing song, like James Taylor song, and it needs congas. And so I just jumped in my Jeep and drove as fast as I could to Guitar Center and bought a pair of congas, and then came back and like played congas till midnight. And then, so that's the only drums that's on that song now.
Yeah.
And that is the version that I felt like this is probably my preferred version of the song, but I understand that the other one is awesome. And the other one will be really cool live at the show. So we played the other one at the show and then we released it because it was the one we played at the show. But in my mind, it was always kind of like, I think the more emotional version of the song that I feel is this other version that's very grand, but it's grand in like Peter Gabriel way, not like I mean, honestly, the drums are like so massive in the other one that I call it the GC Pro, which is like a Guitar Center Pro version. Like I call it like the Guitar Center version because it just feels like somebody wailing on like a giant DW drum kit.
Yeah.
Which is cool, but like, yeah. So all that to say, like, I think it worked great for live and it was fun to release it as basically that version. But I kind of always knew that I kind of wanted to have this song towards the back end of the album and it really to feel, I wanted it to feel more like a montage or like a credits at the end of a movie song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That person feels like it's an action sequence. And this one feels you just like took in a whole thing and now you can kind of reflect on it,
Looking for a lifetime of purpose and plans, safety to soar, courage to land. Whatever horizon, wherever we stand, we will always belong because we began. But in time, lost in the moment, running blind. Let's go, let go again. Look at us, look alive, all in the moment, waking up to the light, feeling the flood again. Right now, you and I, all the emotions, heaven is me and you. Heaven in me is
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I like both versions, so I'm happy that they both exist. As we kind of conclude at the beginning, we put a pin in it about how you guys make unique music that's hard to put on playlists and Spotify, and how for me, when I share it, I often tell people you gotta listen to the whole album all the way through. For you as an artist, and now coming into this, you're about to go on tour, you've got a new album releasing, but you are in the world of like streaming and Spotify and playlists where albums aren't as popular as they used to be, where people don't buy a CD, put it in their car and listen to it all the way through anymore. That's super rare. So for you living in that space, what has that been like? And yeah, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's fine. Like I don't think of it as being bad. I think of it as being the format drives the art in a lot of, like, we have the length that we're used to for albums, like 40 minutes, is because of vinyl.
Yeah.
The format drove the art. And so now the format is like TikTok or like Reels. And so that's why so many artists will do a song at a minute 30 to like 2 minutes, because a minute 30 is where Spotify will start to pay you.
Oh,
Right. So a lot of rap songs, like tons of rappers will just release like 2 minute songs
yeah.
and just reels to feed the algorithm. And then they'll collect a ton of like monthly listeners on Spotify, which is cool. I mean, like that's a hustle. Um, it's just not my hustle.
Yeah.
Like process is just gonna be, I'm not saying that anything of that doesn't have integrity. It has integrity in that it's like it's very much trying to like play a game. I personally am just not very interested in playing that game. There's other games, like we play the merch game, we try to like one up everybody all the time by doing like thrifted stuff, or like this week we have an auction instead of like a pre-order of regular merch, because it just feels so fresh. Like I love that. But for when it comes to like the music and like what I want to leave as a legacy, it is primarily albums. Like I think that's the way that I create the best. Anytime we've tried to release singles on their own, once again, it's just hard to put them in a playlist with Spotify. And so in a sense, we're going to be playing a losing game. And I mean, no, yeah, like this week, you're talking about Spotify this week, I even just got not frustrated, but I was just like, I got to this point when I was at the airport a couple days ago where I was like, what are we doing? Like trying to show that we can spike our numbers really high on release day on one app. We have a core that is so dedicated. They blow away every agent and every other like peer I have. Every time you tell people about like how many tickets they buy or merch, or like they're so supportive. I'm just like, I don't care about like this algorithm. Like I want to help them out. And so we said anybody who sends us that they're coming to our show with a ticket, we'll text you the link right now. And I just started master drop. We sent it to like almost 1,000 people, I think.
That's crazy.
Then the next day, it's like same thing. I'm like, let's just put the album up for $10 and people can buy it now ahead of its release. Cause I just think I just care more about our fans than the game. So.
Yeah, no. And honestly, that's why I appreciate you guys and I connect with, because that's the kind of music I like and I'm into. And there's a large fan base who are craving stuff like that. Chad, I want to thank you for doing this. This has been, again, like for me, it's like of people I wanted to interview when starting this podcast. You guys are at like the very top of the list because I'm a massive fan. So I'm pumped that I got to do this. But for you guys are about to go on tour. There's a new album coming out. Do you want to tell the people how they can support? And I want to say too, like for people who are listening to this, like Spotify is great. Apple Music's great for helping artists get found and whatever. It doesn't make them any money. So if you are hearing Chad and you're like, I want to support Christian artists who are like really trying to make cool art, I want to encourage you to go and like buy the album, buy several albums if you want, get merch, do whatever, get a ticket to a show. But for you, how can people do that? How can they support your guys' work?
Dude, KingsKaleidoscope.com has all that stuff. Like I said, we do put a ton of effort into like merch that is like just very unique. But you can just buy our albums digitally straight from our website. And then if you do stream it, like save it and send it to friends. Like a thing that's hard to explain is best just experienced. So listen to a song, put a song in your car with your friend. That's the best you could do. You know what I mean? Don't even, next time you're with them, show them a song, like share the music. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Chad, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.